Right. So we're moving on to topic 3 in this chapter. So this topic is called evolution. So what is the learning outcome that we're going to cover is outline the theory of evolution. And number 2, we are not looking at number 2 today. So I skip number 2. Number 3, explain how speciation occur as a result of genetic isolation by allopathic and sympatric speciation. So what is it all about? I'll bring you through so you understand. Okay. So what is evolution? Now, I've modified the definition based on the A-level textbook. Based on the A-level textbook, okay? So in your A-level textbook, it says that evolution is a process which eventually will lead to the formation of a new species from a pre-existing species over a long period of time. Because of what? As a result of changes to the gene pools from generation to generation. So you know that because of natural selection, gene pool can change, right? So after many generations, it means after a long period of time, you can see there's a big difference between the current population and the original ancestral population. So this is called evolution. And then they say that evolution can lead to speciation. Okay. Now, it needs a long period of time because there's a gradual change in gene pool in each generation. There's only slight change on it. But when you add up all the change, so the accumulated changes means you add up all the change from generation to generation until now, through a long period of time, it results in the species to become more adapted to new environment. So why is there a change? Because the fetus organism survive, right? So all these changes is because to make the species more adapted to the current environment. Okay. So evolution ensures the survival of the species. It's the most important thing. Just like, for example, no need example. Need example or not? I don't know. I got difficulty to give example. Okay. Now, say for example, SARS. Okay, SARS. Example. SARS spread throughout the world starting from Hong Kong. The fetus organism survive, right? Less fit die, isn't it? So whoever survives now becomes more adapted to whenever there's SARS. So this was survival of the species. Okay. So this is Darwin's theory of natural selection. So where is evolution? Evolution is right at the bottom there. After natural selection occurs, after a long period of time, evolution will take place. Can you add an arrow there and write that evolution can lead to new species? I think you write speciation. Evolution, you put an arrow and write that speciation. That means new species arise from pre-existing species can occur. Okay. So what is species? Because we said new species can arise. So what is species? Species is a group of organisms with similar morphologies. You see all the horses here, they look the same, right? Okay. So they have got similar morphology, physiological, biochemical, and behavioral features. Morphological means structural features. Got 2 eyes, 2 ears, the ear of shape of ears like this, the size like this, orientations like this. Okay. So this is called morphology. Physiological means the way the body works. How do we move? We have got muscles and bones and joints. So therefore we can move, right? How do we take in oxygen? We've got lungs. Fish will have got gills, right? So excretory system, kidney, liver, digestive system. So this is called physiological. Biochemical has to do with chemical reactions and all the molecules. Important molecules are DNA. So DNA-based sequence, amino acid sequence of polypeptide. So this is biochemical. Behavioral means how do they feed? How do they hunt for food? How do they mate? Okay, so it's called behavioral. How do they dance? You know, mating call means they dance and then they sing. Okay, so this is called behavior. Now, second definition. Species is a group of organisms that can interbreed among themselves to produce vigorous and fertile offspring. So they can mate, not only can they mate, they can produce offspring. Not only that, their offspring must be vigorous. Vigorous means strong, can survive very well. And then fertile, so they can produce the next generation. So this is another second definition of species. Not only physically they look the same, but they can interbreed one and they can produce vigorous fertile offspring. And then also they are reproductively isolated from other species in the natural environment. What does it mean? That means to say that in the natural environment, why they are considered as different species? Because they are reproductively isolated, means they cannot interbreed. Let's say you take a dog and then you take a wolf. In natural environment, they don't mate. But in the lab or in the zoo, you take them, you mate them, they can produce offspring. That one is not natural anymore. Because we deliberately put them together, or better still, you do IVF. That one you say, they can produce offspring, so they are same species. Cannot. It must be in natural condition, they cannot meet and mate. So they are different species. Okay? So this is the three important point for the definition of species, not only the first one. Okay, all these three. So therefore, the best way to determine whether two organisms are of the same species is we must make sure they can interbreed. After interbreed, they can produce offspring. After that, offspring is vigorous. After that, offspring is fertile. Then, yes, they are. So let's say, for example, I cross the horse with donkey, I produce mule. Can produce offspring, so horse and donkey are same species. Cannot. You check the mule. The mule is what? Mule is sterile, you know. If mule is sterile, that means to say, are horse and donkey same species? No, right? Because it doesn't align with the definition of offspring must be fertile and vigorous, isn't it? So therefore, horse and mule, they are not the same species. Okay? Full stop. Okay, now you got these two birds here. The bird on the left side look chacat. Then you want to say, are they same species? You cannot use, they have got similar morphological already, because morphological look different, right? So the next way to test them is to cross them, isn't it? See whether they can produce offspring. But the problem is, if you want to test them by crossing them, there are quite a lot of problems. Sometimes the organisms are not, there's no alive individual. That means they do exist in the past, but they're extinct already. Then for all the organisms extinct, you want to see whether this and this, they are same species, you cannot cross them already. Right? They are dead. Or you got in a zoo, but all same sex, all are male or all are female. Cannot cross. Okay? Cannot cross. And then maybe you say it can cross, but there's no time or facility to attempt interbreeding, because it takes a long time, especially for animal. It takes a long time. So you don't have the time to do that, don't have facility to do that, okay? Because you have to raise them, okay? Organisms do not breed in captivity. They are sometimes in the zoo, right? You know, when you're stressed, your behavior will change. Go on. Who after stress eat a lot? Who after stress don't eat one? Who after stress will sleep a lot? Good. At least you can rest. Who after stress will watch a lot of YouTube one? Or go shopping? I don't know what you do. Oh, you got something that you do right after stress. Same for animal. You know, and the wild, we catch them, we put in the zoo. Stress, isn't it? Definitely stress, isn't it? Then when they're stressed, you think they'll interbreed or not? They may not interbreed, isn't it? Because they're so stressed already. So they don't want to eat, they don't want to move, they're not even interested in mating, okay? So they cannot breed in captivity. That's a problem. Then organisms reproduce asexually. So if they reproduce asexually, we cannot breed them and see whether they're same species, right? We cannot cross them. And then immature, yeah, we have, but they're immature, so they cannot interbreed yet because they don't produce eggs. They don't produce sperms yet. So these are all the problems when we want to test whether they are the same species, but we cannot cross them. So these are possible problems. So therefore, we still come back to looking at morphology to see whether they're the same species. So what is speciation? It's the formation of new species from pre-existing species. Okay? So why is it speciation can occur? It's because of reproductive isolation. The moment this organism and the other organism, they cannot interbreed, that means they are isolated, they're separated from reproduction, means breeding, right? Then they become two different species. So why they become two different species? Because of reproductive isolation between both of them. So what is it that can prevent two persons from interbreeding? Tell me. A, one person in Subang Jaya. B, another person in Australia. You can zoom, cannot interbreed also. This is called geographical isolation. A, one person in Malaysia. B, one person in US. When you're awake, the person is sleeping. When the person is awake, you're sleeping. Temporal differences. Cannot know each other. Cannot fall in love. Of course, no interbreeding also. So temporal separation, isolation. Can you see a lot of reasons why you don't interbreed? Okay. So this is called reproductive isolation. So there are two main type of reproductive isolating mechanism, this method to prevent them from interbreeding. One is called prezygotic isolating mechanism. And another one is called postzygotic isolating mechanism. Prezygotic means before even zygote can be formed, they already know there is already no interbreeding. That means they don't even meet together to mate. So they cannot produce zygote. Before zygote is formed, they're already separated from mating. So no zygote. So this is isolation before fertilization can happen. Now, postzygotic isolating mechanism means they actually meet each other and mate with each other and zygote is formed. No. But then from there onward, zygote got a lot of problem. So that means not vigorous, not fertile, right? So even though they mate already, then because the offspring is not vigorous and fertile, they are still considered as different species. They are still considered as this reproductive isolation, but this is postzygotic reproductive isolating mechanism. Okay, so let's look at the diagram. It's easier to understand. All these examples are prezygotic isolating mechanism. The two organisms are prevented from interbreeding because number one, geographical isolation. One in the east, one in the west. Okay, zoom also no use one. Okay, number two, ecological. Ecological means what? Two of you in the same place, but one person always in the library, the other person always in the classroom. They never meet. Understand? So if you say about jungles, you got these two birds. One bird will always feed on top of the tree. Another bird will feed at the bottom of the tree. They never meet. Or one bird loves to feed on tree A. The other bird prefer to feed on tree B. They never meet, even though they're in the same jungle. So this is called ecological, means habitat, different habitat. Temporal is mating season different. Like this butterfly, mating season is March to June. Another butterfly, mating season June to July to October. So when they're ready to mate, there's no mate available. When another mate is ready to mate, you are not available. Just like plant, you flower during this season, another plant flower at another season. The pollen cannot meet the stigma. Okay. Then behavioral. So you know that you see a lot of documentary show, right? National Geography. They show you that the birds the fish they have to, the male bird or male fish have to dance, dance, and then fly or make a feather. Very nice, okay? And then run around. And then after that, and see whether female like or not. Female like means successful, then can mate, right? Female don't like, or female scared, run away. So sometimes they dance, and then the female say, what's he doing? Then run away. So it means the behavior, they cannot understand that the behavior is mating call. So they run away. So they call behavioral isolating mechanism. Behavior not the same, right? Morphological means when the male and female mate, right, their reproductive organs must be able to be compatible, like lock and key hypothesis. Understand? Okay, so this is called morphological. If not the same, then cannot. Gamete multiplicity means, okay, maybe mating occur already. So there's this, they call what? Copulation. It's called copulation. You know copulation, right? When the male and female organs are together, it's called copulation, right? Okay. So gametes means the sperm already enter the female's uterus, but the sperm, all of them die off. All of them die off because of what? Maybe because of antibody of the female. Okay. Or the macrophages of female. Okay. Remove all of them. So therefore, this is called gamete multiplicity means cannot survive. Cannot survive. Also you got mating, but then no use. So before zygote is formed, isolation already occurred. So this is called prezygotic isolating mechanism. So they cannot interbreed. Then we have got, so you're going to look at example for geographical isolating mechanism. Then we have postzygotic isolating mechanism. Postzygotic means they manage to interbreed, the zygote managed to form, that's why postzygotic. But then after zygote is formed, there's some problem. First one is zygote motility, means zygote die, cannot grow. The second one is reduced reproductivity. So you produce the male, so offspring produced, but then offspring is sterile. Okay. The third one is called hybrid breakdown. So species A, species B cross to produce a hybrid AB. Offspring produced, can survive, can reproduce. But then as a subsequent generation, you can see that the offsprings in subsequent generation become less and less vigorous, less and less fertile, and eventually become non-viable, means cannot survive, and also totally sterile. So this is called hybrid breakdown. So when this occurs, that means species A and species B are different species because offspring is not vigorous and fertile. Okay, so these are examples of postzygotic isolating mechanism causing two organisms to be considered as different species. So I have to stop here today because it's time's up already. We will continue the speciation in the next lesson. Okay.